Hey everyone. I figured I'd go ahead and jump on now. Say hey. We'll get to reading some poems here in a few minutes. But for those of you already here and those of you coming, I just want to say thank you. Excited to read some poems. One Emily As poem and then some unfinished murder ballad poems from my next book. But I'll introduce everything once we get going. The house is so quiet here. Emily took the kids out to the bookstore for a little bit. Belle had a half-price gift card she was really wanting to use. So she's getting to do that, and I get a little bit of quiet. I think actually even the dogs are asleep upstairs. So this is fantastic. Hopefully everyone's had as beautiful weather today as we've had here in Ohio. It's been fantastic. We'll give people just a couple more minutes for the 7 o'clock start, and then I'll get to reading. Oh, there's the dog. Hey, Mia. Good, so I won't be completely alone in person to do this. We'll give just one more minute. As you can tell, I've got my pajamas on. I always end up sleeping in an old pair of college Worcester shorts. And to rep sundress, I got my outspoken shirt on. So excited to get to read these poems to you folks. And the dogs are back. All right, so I'm going to start tonight just to get a little warm-up going by reading an Emily As poem. This one was in New Letters a little ways back and is in the manuscript of Emily As poems I put together, a selected thing for 10 years of them. This is called Emily, As I Held Her Body Barely. I asked my thickening palms if they had a plan for Emily, and all they could do was weather my daily efforts. I picked away at the calluses beneath my fingers, but I left the palms alone. They are dedicated to Emily. They want to be the largest cupping of her pink flesh. And how could I stand in the way when they, apparently, love her even more than my lightest touch? It is not lovely to be a catcher's mitt for a woman's body, but I can think of nothing better to allow. So I wanted to get one of those in just as a sort of warm-up. I've got 8 or 9 of these unfinished murder ballad poems I want to read tonight. I've got a book coming out this summer from Jellyfish Highway called Unfinished Murder Ballads, and each of them are prose poems. Sort of bent off the idea of the tradition of a murder ballad, but trying to find new entry and exit points and trying to find sort of weirder ways to go about it and try to make it a little more Midwestern Gothic, and trying to mess with these scenarios and introduce some from real life and some imagined, and see how they would play out. So I'm really excited that this is going to come out this summer. So I think in August sometime. So I'm going to read 6 or 7 of these. It might be 8. And then I'll answer as many questions as you folks have about whatever. I think on the Facebook post this morning I said something about pie and Indians baseball, but we can keep it to poetry. That's fine. So this is Unfinished Murder Ballad. The inventor of small things ends his denial. Not a creator of bones, but a creator of better marrow, he spent years on the door handle, but never understood the wood his creation could move. So, when his lock splintered through the door frame, the thieves never appreciated the fact that they were pissing all over the gentleness of a great artist. They took the blood from the unbold. They implanted him with the grandness of death. They cornered him in the corner of his own world and never even checked his palms to see what small tinker he was holding when the boot print of the other side of the door came crashing in. I don't know if anyone's ever been out and about in any sort of non-rural setting and run into a cowboy, or at least someone who's dressed like a cowboy. But this happened to me in Columbus at a coffee shop where I was walking in to just to get a cup of coffee and walk out, and sort of stopped in my place because a guy had come in dressed as a cowboy. Now, we got farms around Ohio, but we don't have cowboys anymore. I'm not certain if we ever did, but anyway, so this guy, young man, walked in dressed as a cowboy, and I was in the middle of doing this project and immediately had to imagine the fact that he might kill someone someday in the pursuit of being a cowboy. So anyway, this one is called Unfinished Murder Ballad. The only dedicated cowboy in Columbus, Ohio, objects to the price of his black coffee. Slenderness worn from where the muscle once wanted to grow, then grew only to fit an active frame and casting of a man who had no room in his world for the modernity of the city he lived in. He knew that if he was going to have the energy to make it through his day as a chew-spitting communications technician at AT&T, he would need a lunchtime coffee. Up at dawn, he had tended to his crop on the fire escape. He had fed all the animals before he fed himself, and all 3 of his cats appreciated that sort of man. Now, though, the slack before him was demanding $2 for a black coffee, and that wore on him the way a bad hand would have worn on the Duke. His father had been a tax attorney and bequeathed him no rifle. He would need to go to the pawn shop again. So one of the fun things when you're trying to sort of re-put together an old genre of writing is trying to find abstract ways to approach it. Almost all of the unfinished murder ballads have some sort of boring gender dynamic, have sort of no abstract at all. They're all fairly similar revenge stories. So I wanted to find some different areas that I could mess with and make it, at the very least, a little bit more fucked up. If not a little bit more interesting, and it made me more engaged in the process of it. Anyway, so this is Unfinished Murder Ballad, The Walls Slid Back Down, Joining. She had no time to describe the lost things, but the trail was epic. So we chased first where she was coming from. There was the dead, and that was expected. There was that blood that seemed to drag by her out into the woods to be killed again, and that disregard was maybe most impressive. It takes dedication to kill the killed, and do so in a public way. Why we couldn't see from any great distance was what she demolished her parents' house as well. She didn't set any fires. She took it apart piece by piece, smashing the strong bits, being gentle where she could. It looked like a puzzle violently undone. It looked bathed in her parents' remains. She must have been working on it for months. So I don't know how many people are from really small towns or drove through really small towns a lot. But there's a couple towns between Mount Vernon, where I grew up, and Columbus that have these 50-person, 100-person towns that you just sort of drive through. My favorite town of which is probably Jelloway, Ohio. On the way up to Worcester, you'd go through this really small town. And some of these places don't have a store. Some of them just have one store. Some of them really don't have anything but houses. But there's one that has just one store that's constantly closing and being sold and opened up. And I saw what it looked like a young lady who'd just gotten lost and was dressed like the world had tried to ruin her a little bit. And she just looked sad, and she kept being approached by this businessman. And I sort of imagined a much crazier story was actually happening than probably was. But that is sort of how my imagination works. So this is called Unfinished Murder Ballad. In some towns, there is only one public official and one prostitute. They canceled the crossing countdown for the one blind resident. That bird sound only pisses off the real birds of the town, which really is just a state route that barely winds through, even though the cars refuse to acknowledge the dip and speed. No matter, they all see the prostitute sitting on the picnic table outside the cold beer drive-through, and since she wears only colors that clash with the blue polar bear on the car side of the building, everyone knows that quickly their world could improve with such a rainbow before them. Not a mayor, not a police officer, the township representative, one Columbia Gas Management, knows that only one of them should be perched outside that table getting drunk. But if all 270 guns were trained on one target, it would be his spilling they might desire most. This next one is one of the abstract ones that you're trying to approach these revenge plots without even having too much of the characters involved, and sort of what sets up this scenario is left out. But there's always a victim in a murder ballad, even if the revenge isn't really understood. And so trying to find these interesting abstracts and different ways to approach the murder ballads was interesting. And this is one of the ones that I really like, that sort of came out of nowhere. Unfinished Murder Ballad, a misinterpretation of Big Love. It was a quick question, and all sorted out delivery, and the simple answer was the ocean. It felt like the ocean, at first water, and at second all too much water. One thimble could be the rest of the world if your eyes and stomach can handle a good hunger. Some men use both hands to cradle and consume their love. They never last too long. They always become shells, their fat leaking past the beach, their bone untender in the mouths of fish. So I've got 3 more of these I want to read. I was excited to read some of these tonight, just not in preparation of the book, but I think the only time I've gotten to read these otherwise is I did a reading at Columbus Academy of Art and Design at CCAD. For their magazine Botticelli. And I had people that had heard me read different poems before get really excited about this. And so that sort of gave me the encouragement I needed to try to finish the book and try to get it placed, and luckily I did. But these last three close out the book, and they're maybe my three favorite poems in the book. The first one, first of the last ones, is Unfinished Murder Ballad, The Girl Was a Raspberry. Killing a mile of steam at a time, the fog pouring like the best lies that can trace the valley with a plastic bag tenderness. And that girl, I tell you, she was a raspberry. She said she had real skin, but the world around her could only be swallowed, never chewed without leaving moments of terror around the mouths of all the boys she called to. I know her fatalities talked more without the days counting them, and I also know her tight intentions could be like seeds beginning to grow underneath a molar. No man had straight teeth after he met her. Part of that was because they were valley people. Part of that was she wouldn't lay down with any of them without a large tree branch within her thick arm's reach. One of the things that drove me crazy about the old-fashioned murder ballads was a lot of them are lovers' trysts and women killing other women because of a dude, which didn't quite ring true to me anymore. I mean, I get the vengeance. That's fine. So there are a lot of female characters in this book that respond quite violently to mistreatment by men, by women, by their parents, and things like that. And it was always interesting to me. I read through the book and sort of counted the deaths, and the men always seem to die so gruesomely. I don't know what psychologically that says about me, but it's more fun to see how the stories would develop when there was a female as a driving force to the violence, when they took sort of all the power out of the scene and did what they pleased. Anyway, so obviously with a large tree branch, that did not go well for those men. Two more. Unfinished Murder Ballad, When the Swimmer Drowns. Healthy until the holes were pushed through him, took circular pieces of the flesh and exploded them into a star shape for the fish to explore. He was a boat, they said. He could spend all day in the water. He was a boat, they said. He could be found in water. He was a boat, they said, with enough separation between his ribs, the water could reach in and take him down deep enough to be home forever. The river he swam crossed several county lines quickly, snaked through the triangle that led through into Knox, and all those trees just kept providing cover for a rifle. Anyone could have fired those shots. Everybody said he was a boat. Everybody also said he was an asshole and a liar. So in that one, without even giving a name or a possibility of who committed the crime, it was interesting to set the scene and just let it unfold with, look, that guy's a dick, and someone was going to kill him. Everyone knew he swam. So taking away the revenge plot and just making it sort of where the unfinished bit comes in is, sometimes we just don't know, and sort of that's how that one played out. So I've got one more I'm going to read, and then I'll answer as many questions. I've got a computer so I can read them a little bit better, and I don't have to squint. And I've hugged and kissed most of you, I'm sure, but it could get a little weird if I hadn't. So I read them off the computer here. So last one, Unfinished Murder Ballad, Caribou. Rush the darkness, bend your head down, allow your crown to plunge through the urgency of the now. If there really was a person there, will it ever matter to you? It should, but then again, it isn't always about should. There are whole nations unburied. They were faithful, intent on good, and it only took one ambition to render their poignancy moot. Sometimes you are in a forest of people. Sometimes those people carry no seed. So in the whole project, in which is about 60 pages long, I played a lot with the different scenarios and letting the landscape sometimes be the killer, sometimes letting people that didn't know each other, sometimes letting it be a little bit more old-fashioned with a killer and a victim, and things like that. But the poetry in this writing had always seemed sort of underwhelming. The songs are great, like Tom Waits and Murder Ballads and things like that are all fantastic. But the language and getting to play more with the abstract of it, fucking with the gender inequity, fucking with the different ways that these scenarios get set up in traditional murder ballads was a lot of the fun of writing it. And so again, I'm really excited for this book to come out in August from Jellyfish Highway. So I will scroll down here so I can read if any questions people have. So I will leave it to you folks. Oh, Aaron, I just saw your comment. Gotta rep Safta Outspoken whenever you can. Oh, thank you, Janine. The prose poetry sort of came with the fact that each project I try to try something new. And if I spend a lot of time working on Emily As poems or writing something that has a normal structure to it, or the next thing I try to do, I try to make sure it's different, if only thing to keep me on my toes a little bit. Prose poems obviously lend themselves, to the narrative, and these are, even when they're abstract, they've got some narrative to them. So part of it was time to work in prose poetry again, and part of it was it fit what I was trying to do the best. Let me go back here. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, Chris, favorite part of Ohio or being an Ohioan? Part of it is that right now I think anyone who's proud to live in Ohio at all has to sort of stand up. We have a lot of work to do. So when I was younger and it wasn't a challenge to be an Ohioan like it is now, it was, I like having 4 seasons. I like the teams I like my family being around. Part of what would stop me from leaving Ohio now is that I love it too much and there's too much work to do sort of in the state. Luckily, I'm blessed with the family I've got and the incredible writing community that I have. We had another Columbus person on Poets in Pajamas recently. We had Maggie. We have just a great group of people. So right now, I'm loving my writing community in Ohio maybe more than anything at all. Let's see. Oh, Billy, about the murder ballads. Part of it was I always loved the songs that came out of murder ballads. And when I was trying to think of the next project to do, I found myself listening to them over and over again and maybe took it as a challenge or maybe took it as something that was really interesting. Part of it is also it was completely different from anything I'd written before. I don't keep a lot of violence in my writing. I don't do that sort of thing, and I don't normally have that much narrative in the poems I write. So I like challenges, and I write enough that sometimes I'm just looking for something exciting to try, and sometimes fail completely, obviously, but sometimes they're successful to some certain extent at least. Let's see. Scott, how do I plan to abuse my powers? Well, I have the same writing schedule every month of the year. For 5 or 6 years now. I've done the same thing, and it's more than 30 poems a month. I've promised both Emily and some other people that I'll quit talking about the sort of obsessiveness of my own writing practice and stop putting numbers on things, but I do it every day. And so coming up with 30 poems in 30 days is not difficult at all. So I'll do much more than 30, but we'll see. I'm still working on that Trump sequence right now, so it's trudging and unhappy work on some days, but I'll keep working on it anyway. Let's see. Sam had a pie question. Awesome. Rhubarb. Just straight rhubarb pie is great. Strawberry rhubarb pie is the best of all pies. So that's my all-time favorite. Katie, about the Emily sequence. I read one poem earlier to sort of get warmed up. That was an Emily as poem from New Letters. It was in New Letters. I started writing those about 10 years ago. As sort of, that is the closest thing to my voice as a poet. Is the Emily as poems when I taught a fun workshop down at SAFTA on love poems and things like that, and finding the tether and messing with it, and so I've been writing those for about 10 years, and so that is sort of my poetic center, and I'll go back and write those in between projects. So I'll always have 2 or 3 things. I'll do a research project. I'll do one of the abstract sequences that's like 200 or 300 poems. And then I'll sit down and in between those write Emily as poems for a week, to sort of both cleanse the palate, I suppose, and to come back to what is my actual, say, poetic center in terms of the way I write normally and what I think maybe my best voice is. Now, I write enough that I'll go and purposefully mess with that repeatedly and try something new. But the Emily as poems I'll always do, and keep doing for years on. When I was talking about the collection that's the best of the 10 years, I mean, it's interesting to see how they developed when I go back and look at that manuscript. Let's see. Everybody's thinking about, there's some musicians. Oh, you know what? I've got, if you go on Spotify, I've got, I always put together playlists when I'm working on a new project. There's an Unfinished Murder Ballads playlist. There was about 6 or 7 songs. I use playlists most of all to find starting and stopping points. When I do the really large sequences, right, and I'm trying to map out different arcs and how they'll work, I'll map, if I've got an idea that it's going to be 172 poems, or it's going to be 342, or it's going to be whatever it's going to be, I go ahead and map it out so I can get the arcs down the way I want to work. And I use the music in the different playlists as markers of how to go back and sort of get back into different pieces of it. Because you can't, it's too big of a ship to remember it all. You can map it the best you can, but I use musical cues to try to get me back into a certain point if I'm editing, trying to fix, or if I'm trying to go back into a different arc I'm working on. So, like before the Trump poems, the longest one I ever wrote was Nude Male with Echo. It was 342 poems. It had 7 different arcs that sort of went back and forth. And I used the music as cues to try to get me into certain pieces if I've got to go back in. So that's why I use Spotify and playlists and things like that. And then I've got, favorite songs for Emily as poems, a lot of Rufus Wainwright, things like that. And then I've got a poetry business mix for all those people doing a lot of submitting like I do. I've got like pop songs that I'm liking at that point to play and sort of be light and not too serious. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Katie. But normally I've got, a year's worth of stuff planned. Everything sort of went by the wayside after the election. But it would normally be, like I've got a book coming out from Eighth House called Lady You Shot Me. It's about the life and death of Sam Cooke. And while I was doing research for that, I was working on a larger abstract thing. And then obviously once the research was done, I wrote Emily as poems and then was able to get into the Sam Cooke thing. And so normally there's a pretty good process going. Everything sort of screeched to a halt. In fact, I don't even have my list of future projects right now going. It's just Trump is a fire without light right now, and I'll be working on those for the foreseeable future. Luckily, I've got some projects finished and getting ready to come out. Both the murder ballads and You Don't Have to Die Well for Me and Lady You Shot Me will all be out in a year to 2 years. So it'll be all right if I don't finish a manuscript for a little while. I can just brood over these political poems and keep working on them. Anything else? Yeah, it's screechy's the nicest way to put it, isn't it, Sean? We got a few minutes left. If anyone has any other questions, or I know the reading portion's done, but if people are out of questions, I could read one more poem or any. Oh, thanks, Sam. Hey, Chris. All right, well, fair enough. Thank you, folks, for listening to me read. I really appreciate it. It's fun to get into these unfinished murder ballads and really start to... One more, Billy? Is that what... Any preferences? Since you made the request, we can do one more poem, and then I'll just say goodbye. Recipe for... Talk about Sundress Cookbook. That's... we had Chris. We've got our Uber intern... He was just on here. He's watching. I'll read one more and then we'll wrap it up. Is that okay, Sam? I know I'm bucking the trend. Reading one more. I'm going backwards. But I'll read one more, and then if I get in trouble with Sam, I'll send you more cupcakes, dude. I try to stay out of trouble these days for the most part, but then again, I can only do so much. So I'll read one that's in the book Not for Art Nor Prayer. And so this one's called We Did Our Best to Breathe Into It. So this was this came out on Eighth House a couple of Novembers ago. So this, and originally I'm reading it from it was easier to get my copy of the Louisville Review, so shout out to the Louisville Review. Anyway, so I'll read this and then say goodnight. Thanks again to everyone. We did our best to breathe into it. Lung punctured, we did our best to breathe into the sheep's mouth. Emily even covered the bloody hole from where the metal, shorn from the fence post, first struck the animal, stuck deep into the soft red tissue, now unwilling to expand the way it should. We did too much for an animal we witnessed injured from our car, did too much to bloody our clothes on Route 3 while family waited for us to eat a holiday meal. But we needed to save something then, needed to put our mouths on something desperate, fighting to survive with righteous intention. We, yelling about sex, the having it, the not having it enough, saw the spearing take the shoulder first, then plunge deeper still, while Emily took the gravel quickly and burst from the car in shock. The animal died before the farmer, the owner, or the veterinarian could arrive or pronounce hope, and I, with my tongue warm from the expellant of life, looked at my lovely wife, her sweater torn, and I, with my tongue, my tears only for the sheep, asked her to hold me, despite my wavering hands. So nice to read an old one there, but that was the one I could grab. So anyway, thank you, Sam. Thank you for everyone coming and listen to me read. Obviously, Sam will post the video if anyone wants to catch anything they missed. And I will see you folks all soon, I hope very much. So, thank you.